Captain Bora stared at her ship's display screen with growing confusion. The numbers made no sense. Her sensors showed something massive moving through space, but the readings were impossible. No ship could be that big. No planet could move that fast. She had been patrolling the outer edges of Kethari space for 3 years. It was boring work. Nothing ever happened out here. The humans had abandoned this area decades ago, leaving behind empty stations and silent colonies. Other alien races had moved in quickly to claim the valuable systems. Everyone agreed the humans were gone for good, but now her instruments were screaming warnings at her. "Computer, run the scan again," Bora said. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands shook slightly as she gripped the control panel. The ship's computer hummed for several seconds. Then the same impossible readings appeared on her screen. An object bigger than most moons was moving through space at incredible speed. It was heading toward the border of Kethari territory. Bora had never seen anything like it. In her 15 years as a patrol captain, she had encountered many strange things: space pirates, illegal mining operations, lost cargo ships. But this was different. This was something that should not exist. She opened a communication channel to her home base. "Control. This is Captain Bora on Patrol Ship 79. I need to report unusual sensor readings." The reply came back quickly. 79. This is Control. What kind of readings? Bora looked at her screen again. The object was getting closer. "Control, I'm detecting a massive artificial structure. It's larger than anything in our databases. Request permission to investigate." There was a long pause. Finally, Control responded. 79. Are you certain your sensors are working properly? Run a full diagnostic. Already done. Control. Sensors are functioning normally. The object is real. Another pause. Maintain safe distance, 79. Do not approach without direct orders. We're sending Admiral Tayman's fleet to your location. Bora felt a mix of relief and worry. Admiral, Tayman commanded the most powerful war fleet in Kethari space. If they were sending him, the situation was serious. While she waited, Bora studied the readings more carefully. The object was not just big. It was perfectly smooth and showed signs of advanced technology. Energy readings suggested massive power systems. This was definitely a ship, but who could build something so enormous? Hours passed before Admiral Tayman's fleet arrived. 12 heavy warships dropped out of hyperspace around Bora's small patrol vessel. She had never been so happy to see backup. "Captain Bora," Admiral Tayman's voice came through the communication system. "Show us what you found." Bora transmitted all her sensor data to the Admiral's flagship. She watched on her screen as the 12 warships moved into formation. Even together, they looked tiny compared to the mysterious object. Admiral Tayman had fought in many battles. He had seen the most advanced ships in the galaxy. But as he studied the sensor readings, he felt something he had not experienced in years: fear. The object was not just a ship. It was a floating city. No, it was bigger than that. It was like someone had taken an entire world and given it engines. The energy readings showed power levels that could supply 100 star systems. "All ships, maintain maximum sensor range," Admiral Tayman ordered. "Do not get closer than 100,000 kilometers." Dr. Hyojin was working late in her laboratory when the emergency message arrived. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. For the past 5 years, she had been investigating the abandoned human colonies, trying to understand why an entire species had simply vanished. The humans had been part of galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. They had colonies on hundreds of worlds. They traded with dozens of alien species. Then, 47 years ago, they had packed up and left. Every human settlement went dark within the same month. Their ambassadors returned home. Their trade, ships stopped coming. Most aliens thought the humans had encountered some disaster, maybe a plague or a civil war. Others believed they had simply decided they did not want to deal with other species anymore. Dr. Hyojin had spent years studying the evidence, and she had reached a different conclusion. The humans had not fled in panic. They had planned their departure carefully. They had taken almost everything valuable with them. They had destroyed sensitive equipment before leaving. This was not the behavior of a species running from disaster. This was the behavior of a species preparing for something. But preparing for what? The emergency message on Dr. Hyojin's computer made her heart race. A massive unknown vessel had been detected near human space. Admiral Taemin was requesting all available experts on human technology to join his investigation. Dr. Hyojin packed her research materials quickly. As her transport ship raced toward the outer system, she studied everything she knew about human capabilities. The humans had been advanced, but not unusually so. Their technology was roughly equal to other major galactic powers. They could not have built anything like what the sensors were describing, unless they had learned something new during their decades of isolation. When Dr. Hyojin arrived at Admiral Taemin's fleet, she immediately understood why she had been called. The massive object was clearly of human design. She recognized the smooth hull patterns and the energy signatures, but the scale was beyond anything humans had ever built before. "Doctor," Admiral Taemin said when she reported to his flagship, "what are we looking at?" Dr. Hyojin studied the hour sensor readings carefully. "Admiral, this is definitely human technology, but it represents an advancement of at least 1,000 years beyond what they had when they left." "That's impossible," Admiral Taemin replied. "They've only been gone for 47 years. "I know, Admiral, but the evidence is clear. Either the humans have made incredible technological progress, or—" She paused, not wanting to say what she was thinking. "Or what, Doctor?" "Or they never really left, Admiral. Maybe they just moved somewhere we couldn't find them. Maybe they've been building and preparing all this time." Admiral Taemin felt his blood run cold. If the humans had spent nearly 50 years advancing their technology in secret, what else had they been doing? And why were they returning now? Captain Bo-Ra was still maintaining her watch when the massive object began to change course. Her sensors showed it turning toward the Cathari fleet. It was moving slowly, but even its slow speed was faster than most ships could travel at full power. "All ships, prepare for possible contact," Admiral Taemin ordered. "Weapons ready, but do not fire unless fired upon." The object continued its approach. As it got closer, more details became visible on the sensors. The hull was covered with structures that looked like cities. There were docking bays large enough to hold entire fleets. Energy readings showed thousands of separate power systems working together. This was not just a ship. This was a mobile world. When the object reached a distance of 50,000 kilometers, it stopped. For several minutes, nothing happened. The Cathari fleet waited in tense silence. Then a communication signal reached Admiral Taemin's ship. The transmission was in perfect Cathari language, but the voice was unmistakably human. "Cathari vessels, this is Commander Yeon-su of the Terran world ship New Seoul. We mean no harm. We request permission to speak with your leadership." "Admiral," Taemin stared at the communication panel. "A world ship. The humans had built a ship the size of a world." "Commander Yeon-su," he replied carefully. "This is Admiral Taemin of the Cathari Defense Fleet. Your vessel is impressive. We were not aware that humans had returned to this region of space." "We never left, Admiral," Commander Yeon-su's voice came back. "We've been watching. Now it's time to come home." Dr. Hyojin listened to the exchange with growing amazement. The humans had not only survived their mysterious departure, they had become something far more powerful than anyone had imagined. The question now was, what did they want? And more importantly, what had made them decide to reveal themselves after so many years of hiding? Ambassador Jae-ho received the emergency message while he was eating breakfast in his apartment on the Cathari homeworld. The words on his communication device made him drop his cup of morning tea. "Humans detected. Massive vessel. Immediate. Council meeting required." Jae-ho had not heard those words in decades. He was one of the few aliens still alive who had actually worked with humans before they disappeared. Back then, he had been a young diplomat, eager to build relationships between species. The humans had been his specialty. He had learned their languages, studied their culture, even made friends among their ambassadors. Then they had vanished, leaving him without a job and with knowledge that suddenly seemed useless. Now, apparently, they were back. The emergency council meeting was chaos. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the great chamber, all talking at once. Fear and confusion filled the air. The Cathari had shared Admiral Taymin's sensor readings with everyone, and no one could believe what they were seeing. "It's impossible," declared the Vorthak ambassador. "No species can build something that large." "The humans always were strange," added the representative from the Zephyrian collective. "Maybe they found some ancient technology. Or maybe they made a deal with something we don't want to meet," suggested the Moravian delegate. Ambassador J-Ho listened to the wild theories. With growing frustration, these aliens had no idea what humans were really like. They remembered humans as peaceful traders and explorers, interested mainly in commerce and scientific exchange. They had no understanding of what humans could become when they set their minds to something. "If I may," J-Ho said, standing up. The chamber gradually fell silent. "I worked with humans for 20 years before they departed. I believe I can offer some insight." The council leader gestured for him to continue. "Humans are not like us," J-Ho explained. "When we face a problem, we look for immediate solutions. When humans face a problem, they think about it for a long time. They plan. They prepare. They consider possibilities that we would never imagine." "What are you suggesting?" asked the Vorthak ambassador. "I'm suggesting that they did not leave because they were afraid or because they failed at something. They left because they saw something coming, something that required them to spend 47 years preparing." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. The idea that humans had foreseen some future threat was deeply unsettling. Meanwhile, aboard the world ship New Seoul, Commander Yan Su was preparing for her first real communication with aliens in nearly 50 years. She stood on the bridge of her massive vessel, looking out at the Cathari fleet through the main viewing window. The alien ships looked like toys compared to her world ship. It had not always been this way. Yansu remembered when she was young, and human ships were roughly the same size as everyone else's. But that was before the discovery. Before Dr. Kang Day had detected the signals from beyond the galaxy, before humanity had realized what was coming. "Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to arrange a formal meeting." Yunsu nodded. "Tell them we'll meet with their representatives, but the meeting will be here, on our ship." She knew the aliens would be nervous about boarding a human vessel. Good. They needed to understand that humanity was no longer the same species they remembered. Director Wu Jin was reviewing reports in his office deep inside the world ship when the meeting request came through. As the chief diplomat for the Terran Deep Space Development Project, he had been preparing for this moment for decades. He knew exactly what needed to be said and how to say it. The aliens would have questions. They would want to know where humans had been, what they had been doing, and why they had returned. Some of those questions he could answer. Others he could not, at least not yet. The truth was too big, too frightening for species that had never looked beyond their own galaxy. 3 days later, a small diplomatic shuttle approached the world ship, New Seoul. Ambassador J-Ho was aboard, along with representatives from 5 major galactic powers. As their shuttle flew toward the docking bay, they got their first close look at the human vessel. It was overwhelming. The docking bay alone was larger than most space stations. The interior walls stretched away into the distance like the surface of a metal planet. Lights twinkled in the depths like stars, marking cities and industrial complexes built into the ship's structure. "How many people live here?" whispered the Vorthak representative. "According to our scans," J-Ho replied, "approximately 12 million. The shuttle set down on a platform that could have held 1,000 ships their size. As the aliens stepped out, they found themselves in what looked like the lobby of a vast building. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into artificial clouds. Plants from dozens of worlds grew in carefully maintained gardens. Director Wu Jin was waiting for them. He was a middle-aged human with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He looked exactly like the humans the aliens remembered, peaceful, friendly, interested in cooperation. "Welcome aboard the new soul," he said in perfect galactic common. "I'm Director Wu Jin, thank you for coming." Ambassador Jae-ho stepped forward. "Director, I am Jae-ho. I used to work with human diplomats before you left." "I remember reading about your work, Ambassador," Wu Jin replied. "Your efforts to build understanding between our species were much appreciated. Then perhaps you can help us understand." "What happened?" Jae-ho said. "Why did humanity disappear? Where have you been and why have you returned?" Director Wu Jin gestured toward a seating area near one of the gardens. As they sat down, he considered his words carefully. "We never really disappeared," he began. "We relocated, all of humanity, along with our most important technology and resources, moved to a place where we could work without interruption." "Work on what?" asked the Moravian delegate. "Survival," Wu Jin replied simply. "We detected something that required us to completely change the way we approach existence as a species." The aliens exchanged glances. "What kind of something?" "Jae-ho?" asked Wu Jin paused. "That's complicated. Let me start with what we've accomplished during our absence." He gestured and holographic displays appeared in the air around them. The images showed vast construction projects in deep space, shipyards that could build entire fleets in months, industrial facilities that could process the materials of whole solar systems. "We've built 200 world ships like this one," Wu Jin explained. "Each houses between 10 and 15 million people. We've developed technology that allows us to manipulate matter and energy on scales that would have been impossible before we left." 200 ships like this? The Vorthak representative's voice cracked. That's more military power than the entire galaxy combined." "These are not military vessels," Wu Jin corrected. "They are mobile civilizations. We built them because we needed to become nomadic. We needed to be able to move our entire species, quickly if necessary." "Move where? And why?" Jae-ho pressed. Director Wu Jin stood and walked to the viewing window. In the distance they could see the Cathari fleet, still maintaining their cautious distance. "Ambassador, do you remember what human explorers were like? Always pushing further, always looking for what was beyond the next star?" "Of course," Jae-ho replied. "Human curiosity was famous throughout the galaxy." "Well, we found something," Wu Jin said quietly. "Something that made us realize that all our petty territorial disputes and trade negotiations were meaningless. We discovered that this entire galaxy is in danger." The alien sat in stunned silence. Finally, the Zephyrian representative spoke up. "What kind of danger?" Wu Jin turned back to face them. "The kind that has already consumed 17 other galaxies. The kind that turns every living thing it encounters into more of itself. The kind that will arrive here within the next few years." Ambassador Jae-ho felt his blood turn cold. "You're talking about an invasion." "Not an invasion," Wu Jin corrected. "An extermination, complete and total. Every species, every world, every trace of civilization, all of it converted into something else." "But why didn't you warn us?" the Moravian delegate demanded. "Why did you disappear instead of working with us to prepare?" Director Wu Jin's expression grew sad. "Because 47 years ago, humanity was not strong enough to fight this threat. Neither was anyone else. We needed time to become something more than we were. We needed to evolve." He gestured again, and new holographic displays showed human fighters that dwarfed traditional battleships, industrial ships that could reshape planets, weapons that seemed to bend space itself. "We spent nearly 50 years becoming what we needed to be," Wu Jin continued. "Now we're back because it's almost time. The enemy will be here soon and this galaxy needs to be ready." Ambassador Jae-ho stared at the displays in amazement and horror. The humans had not fled. They had transformed themselves into something that could protect everyone else. "What do you need from us?" he asked quietly. "Time," Director Wu Jin replied. "And trust. The preparations are not complete. We need a few more years to finish what we started." "And then?" "And then," Wu Jin said, looking out at the stars. We fight the most important battle in the history of all life. Dr. Kangde stood in his laboratory aboard the world ship Busan Eternal, staring at the same data that had changed everything 52 years ago. The numbers on his screen still gave him nightmares, even after all this time. Even after humanity had spent decades preparing for what those numbers meant. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his mind was as sharp as ever. It had to be. He was one of only 12 people in the galaxy who fully understood what was coming. The responsibility weighed on him like a mountain. Dr. Kangde, his assistant, called from across the lab. The council representatives have arrived for the briefing. Kangde nodded and saved his work. Today, he would have to explain to the alien species why their entire way of life was about to end. He would have to make them understand why humanity had sacrificed so much to become something different. The briefing room was designed to be impressive. The walls were made of transparent metal, showing the vast interior of the world ship, stretching away in all directions. Cities hung from the ceiling like chandeliers. Forests grew on vertical surfaces that defied gravity. Rivers flowed through the air, held in place by carefully controlled force fields. Ambassador Jeho entered with representatives from 24 species. They had come to learn the truth about the threat humanity claimed was approaching. Most of them clearly did not want to believe it. Dr. Kangde activated his holographic displays. The room filled with images of deep space, showing the empty regions between galaxies. 52 years ago, he began, our long-range sensors detected unusual energy patterns from beyond our galaxy. At first we thought they were natural phenomena, colliding black holes perhaps, or the birth of new stars. The displays showed wave patterns and energy readings that meant nothing to most of the aliens. It took us 3 years to realize what we were actually seeing. The energy patterns were not natural. They were the signatures of industrial activity on an unimaginable scale. A new image appeared showing a map of nearby galaxies. Several were marked in red. We were detecting the complete consumption of entire galaxies. Every star, every planet, every trace of matter, all of it being converted into something else. The Vorthak representative leaned forward. Converted into what? Into more consumers, Dr. Kangde replied. Whatever was doing this was using the matter and energy of whole galaxies to build more of itself. And it was moving in our direction, the aliens murmured nervously among themselves. The scale of what Dr. Kangde was describing was beyond their experience. We calculated that at their rate of progress, they would reach our galaxy within 90 to 100 years. That gave us time to prepare, but only if we acted immediately and completely. Why didn't you tell anyone? The Moravian delegate asked. Why keep it secret? Dr. Kangde's expression grew grim. Because we realized that conventional resistance would be useless. Look at this data. New displays showed the size and power levels of the approaching threat. The numbers were staggering. Each consumer unit is larger than most moons. They can convert matter directly into energy, and energy directly into more consumer units. They reproduce exponentially. Traditional weapons and defenses would only provide them with more raw materials. General Subin entered the briefing room at that moment. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had spent decades planning for war. She had been in charge of humanity's military transformation since the beginning. Dr. Kangde is correct, she said, taking a position beside the scientist. We ran thousands of simulations using the combined military power of all galactic species as it existed 50 years ago. Every simulation ended the same way. Total defeat, within months. So you decided to abandon us? The Zephyrian representative's voice was bitter. No, General Subin replied firmly. We decided to become strong enough to protect everyone. But that required us to change everything about how we approached technology, industry, and civilization itself. She gestured, and the holographic displays changed to show human development projects. Massive shipyards in deep space, planets being converted into raw materials, technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. We had to become nomadic, General Subin explained. We could not defend fixed positions against an enemy of this scale, so we moved our entire civilization into mobile platforms. world ships that could relocate anywhere in the galaxy within days. Captain Inho was listening from the back of the room. He was a fighter pilot, one of the new generation of humans who had grown up entirely on the world ships. To him, the idea of living on a fixed planet seemed strange and dangerous. His fighter was docked in one of the world ship's many hangars. It was larger than the heavy cruisers that other species built, but it was considered a light scout in the human fleet. The aliens had no idea what they were looking at when they saw human military technology. The enemy reproduces exponentially, General Subin continued. So we had to develop technology that could match that exponential growth. We learned to manipulate matter at the atomic level. We built factories that could construct entire fleets from raw asteroids. We developed weapons that could affect fundamental forces. The aliens stared at the displays in growing amazement and fear. What humanity had become was as alien to them as the approaching threat. Engineer Su Young joined the briefing as General Subin finished her explanation. She was responsible for designing humanity's most advanced weapon systems. Her creations could reshape reality itself, but the cost of building them had been enormous. Every advancement came with a price, she said quietly. We had to give up everything that made us the species you remember. We had to become something entirely focused on survival and protection. What do you mean? Ambassador Jeho asked. Su Young gestured toward the transparent walls, showing the interior of the world ship. We have no individual nations anymore, no separate cultures or languages, no art or music that serves only beauty. Everything we are is dedicated to the coming war. The weight of that sacrifice hung in the air. Humanity had transformed itself from a diverse creative species into a unified war machine. But we made that choice willingly, Director Wu Jin said, entering the briefing room. Because we understood what the alternative meant, not just for us, but for everyone. He activated new displays showing the calculated timeline of the approaching threat. They will be here in 18 months. Our preparations are nearly complete, but we need the cooperation of all galactic species. We need every resource, every ship, every person willing to fight. Fight how? The Vorthak representative asked. You said conventional weapons are useless. They are, Director Wu Jin agreed. But we've developed unconventional weapons, technology, that can match the enemy's ability to convert matter and energy. Weapons that can affect space and time themselves. Captain Inho stepped forward. If I may, Director, I can show them what our fighters are capable of. Wu Jin nodded, and Inho activated his personal display system. Holographic images showed his fighter engaging in training exercises. The small ship seemed to phase in and out of reality, striking targets through solid barriers, moving faster, then light without entering hyperspace. We've learned to fight in dimensions the enemy doesn't expect, Inho explained. Our weapons can attack from angles that don't exist in normal space. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the demonstration continued. Human technology had advanced so far that it seemed like magic. This is what 50 years of focused development accomplished, General Subin said. We became something that could stand against the coming threat, but we cannot do it alone. What do you need from us? Ambassador Jeho asked. Everything, Director Wu Jin replied honestly. Every ship you can spare, every resource you can provide, every person willing to fight for the survival of all life in this galaxy. And if we refuse? The Moravian delegate asked. Dr. Kangday reactivated his original displays, showing the energy patterns from the consumed galaxies. Then in 18 months our galaxy will look like this, he said, pointing to the empty regions where other galaxies used to be. Nothing, no stars, no planets, no life, just empty space, and the consumer fleets moving on to the next galaxy. Aliens sat in horrified silence, finally understanding the full scope of what humanity had been preparing for. We gave up our old way of life to save everyone's future, Director Wu Jin said softly. Now we need to know, will you help us fight for that future? Ambassador Jeho looked around the room at his fellow representatives. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also the beginning of understanding. Yes, he said finally. Tell us what to do. The first sign that everything was about to change came from the deep space monitoring station at the edge of the galaxy. Lieutenant Hua Young was on duty when the sensors began detecting massive gravitational distortions in empty space. At first, she thought it was equipment failure. "Computer, run a full diagnostic," she ordered. The diagnostic came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Something enormous was approaching from the void between galaxies, something that bent space itself around its mass. Hua Young activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, her readings were being analyzed by every human world ship in the galaxy. Within hours, the terrible truth was confirmed. The Devourers had arrived early. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo received the alert while he was reviewing battle plans with his senior officers aboard the world ship Sol Prime. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, but 18 months early was not part of any plan. "How many?" he asked Dr. Kangdae, who had immediately transported to the flagship. "Initial scans show at least 50,000 individual units," Dr. Kangdae replied, his voice tight with worry. "Each one is moon-sized, just as we predicted. But Admiral, they're not following our projected approach pattern." Hyunwoo studied the tactical displays. The Devourers were not entering the galaxy at the predicted point. Instead, they were spreading out, preparing to attack from multiple directions simultaneously. "They're smarter than we hoped," he said grimly. "They've learned from consuming other galaxies. Send immediate alerts to all world ships and allied fleets. Battle stations galaxy-wide." Colonel Mi Young was training her ground forces when the alert reached them. She had been preparing her soldiers for the possibility of fighting on consumed worlds, where the very ground itself might be hostile. Her troops were equipped with weapons that could destroy matter at the molecular level, armor that existed partially outside normal space. "All units, this is not a drill," she announced over the communication system. "The enemy has arrived. Prepare for immediate deployment to defensive positions." Her soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Many had never known a galaxy not under threat. To them, this was not the beginning of a war. It was the purpose they had been born to fulfill. The first contact came 3 days later. A Devourer scout unit encountered a patrol of Vortex ships near a mining colony. The aliens tried to run, but the Devourer unit was faster. Captain Dong Hyun watched the battle unfold from his command center aboard the experimental world ship Busan Eternal. The Vortex ships fired everything they had at the Devourer unit. Their weapons struck the enemy directly, but instead of causing damage, they seemed to make it grow larger. "It's converting the weapon energy into more of itself," he reported to Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo. Just as Dr. Kangdae predicted, the Vortex ships were consumed within minutes. The Devourer unit immediately began processing the materials, growing larger and spawning 2 smaller units. The exponential reproduction had begun. "All non-human ships withdraw immediately," Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo ordered across all communication channels. "Do not engage the enemy. Repeat, do not engage." But it was too late for many. Devourer units were appearing throughout the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Traditional military forces tried to defend their home systems, only to provide the enemy with more raw materials. The Cathari Defense Fleet made a heroic stand at their home system. Admiral Taemin commanded 200 heavy warships in the most desperate battle of his life. For 6 hours, they held the line against 3 Devourer units. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead unit," Admiral Taemin ordered. "If we can destroy even one, we might—" His words were cut off as the lead Devourer unit absorbed the energy from his entire fleet's weapons and used it to spawn 4 more units. Within minutes, the Cathari fleet was being systematically consumed. Admiral Taemin's last transmission reached the human world ships just before his flagship was converted. "Tell the humans, we understand now. We should have listened sooner." Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo felt each lost ship like a physical blow. These aliens had trusted humanity to protect them, and he was failing. The enemy was spreading too fast, growing too quickly. "Admiral," Captain Dong Hyun reported from his experimental world ship, "I'm detecting massive Devourer construction activity in the Andorian system. They're building something large. The tactical displays showed the horrifying truth. The Devourers were not just consuming matter randomly. They were building a massive structure in space, something that dwarfed even their largest individual units. It's a gateway, Dr. Kang Day realized with growing horror. They're building a dimensional gateway to bring in reinforcements from other galaxies. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo felt his blood run cold. Their simulations had assumed they would face only the advance force. If the Devourers could bring in their full strength from consumed galaxies, no amount of preparation would be enough. How long until it's operational? He asked. Based on their construction rate, perhaps 72 hours, Dr. Kang Day replied. Then we end this now, Hyun-woo decided. Signal all world ships, full battle deployment. We attack everything at once. Across the galaxy, 200 human world ships received their orders. Each vessel was larger than most inhabited worlds, carrying millions of people and weapons that could reshape reality. They had trained for 50 years for this moment. Captain In-ho launched his fighter from the world ship New Seoul along with 10,000 others. Their mission was to clear a path for the world ship's main weapons. As they flew toward the nearest Devourer concentration, he could see the scope of the enemy's spread. Devourer units covered entire star systems. They had consumed planets, moons, even stars themselves, converting everything into more copies of themselves. The exponential growth was proceeding exactly as Dr. Kang Day had predicted. All fighters, activate dimensional shift capability, In-ho ordered his squadron. Attack from parallel space. The human fighters seemed to vanish from normal reality, reappearing inside the Devourer unit's defensive fields. Their weapons struck at the molecular bonds holding the enemy together, causing massive explosions as entire moon-sized entities came apart. But for every Devourer unit they destroyed, 3 more appeared. The enemy was reproducing faster than they could be eliminated. Admiral, Captain Dong-hyun reported from his position near the dimensional gateway. The gateway is accelerating its construction. I estimate 12 hours until completion, not 72. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo realized their carefully planned battle was collapsing. The enemy was adapting too quickly, growing too fast. All world ships converge on the gateway site, he ordered. If we can't stop them everywhere, we stop them from getting reinforcements. The largest battle in galactic history began as 200 human world ships moved toward the Devourer gateway. Each world ship was accompanied by millions of fighters and support craft. Their weapons charged space itself with energy, causing stars to flicker as they passed. Colonel Mi Young's ground forces deployed to captured worlds, fighting Devourer units that had taken the form of entire landscapes. The very ground tried to consume her soldiers, but their reality-bending weapons carved safe paths through hostile terrain. This is worse than our worst-case scenarios, she reported to Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo. The enemy isn't just consuming matter, it's learning. Each unit we fight is more effective than the last. The truth was becoming clear. Humanity had prepared for 50 years, but the enemy had been consuming galaxies for millennia. Every battle they fought taught the Devourers new strategies. Engineer Su Young worked frantically in her laboratory, modifying weapon systems as fast as new data came in. They're adapting to our dimensional attacks, she reported. We need something they haven't seen before. How long? Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo asked. I need at least 6 hours to reconfigure our primary weapons. We don't have 6 hours, Captain Dong-hyun interrupted. The gateway is entering final construction phase, 4 hours maximum. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo looked at the tactical displays showing his world ships advancing toward the greatest concentration of enemy forces in galactic history. His people had sacrificed everything to become strong enough for this fight. Now he had to decide if that sacrifice would be enough. All ships, maximum acceleration, he ordered. We end this in one decisive battle. The fate of every living being in the galaxy would be decided in the next few hours. The final battle began when Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo's world ships entered the Andorian system. What they found there defied imagination, even after 50 years of preparation. The Devourers had consumed 3 entire planets and converted their mass into a gateway structure that stretched across the space where a sun used to be. Thousands of Devourer units swarmed around the gateway like insects protecting their nest. Each unit was the size of a moon, armed with weapons that could tear apart space itself. But the gateway was the real threat. Through its growing aperture, they could see the darkness between galaxies and the countless lights moving within that darkness. Reinforcements. More Devourers than existed in their entire galaxy, waiting to pour through once the gateway was complete. All world ships, Battle Formation Delta 7, Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo commanded from his flagship Sol Prime. Primary objective is the gateway. Secondary objectives are the Guardian units. We have one chance to get this right. Dr. Sora worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the world ship Incheon Rising. She was the lead quantum physicist responsible for humanity's most advanced weapons. The reports from the front lines were terrifying. Conventional reality-bending weapons were having limited effect. The Devourers were adapting faster than anyone had predicted. "I have a solution," she announced over the communication system, "but it requires us to weaponize dimensional collapse. The risks are enormous." "Explain," Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo demanded. "We can create localized breaks in space-time itself. Essentially, we punch holes in reality around the gateway. The dimensional stress should cause the entire structure to collapse in on itself." "What are the risks?" Dr. Sora hesitated. "If we miscalculate, we could tear a permanent hole in space-time. It might destroy this entire star system, possibly more." Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo looked at the tactical displays. The gateway was nearly complete. In less than 2 hours, it would begin disgorging reinforcements that would overwhelm even humanity's advanced technology. "Do it," he ordered. "Prepare the dimensional collapse weapons." Captain Dong-hyun was coordinating the approach of his experimental world ship Busan Eternal when the first wave of Devourer units attacked. These were not the mindless consumers they had studied. These were intelligent, adaptive weapons that learned from every exchange. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered as weapons. Fire that bent light itself streaked toward his ship. The Busan Eternal twisted through space in ways that should have been impossible, its experimental engines allowing it to move through multiple dimensions simultaneously. The world ship's return fire was equally impossible. Beams of pure force that existed in several dimensions at once struck the attacking Devourer units, causing them to simply cease to exist. But for every enemy they destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "enemy adaptation rate is accelerating. They're learning to counter our weapons faster than we can modify them." Captain Dong-hyun realized the truth that Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo was also discovering. This was not a battle that could be won through superior firepower. The Devourers had consumed too many galaxies, learned from too many different forms of resistance. The only way to win was through sacrifice. Colonel Myung's ground forces were fighting a different kind of battle on the surface of what had once been the planet Andoria Prime. The Devourers had converted the entire world into a living weapon. The ground itself attacked her soldiers, trying to absorb them and add their knowledge to the collective intelligence. Her troops moved in perfect formation, their reality-bending weapons carving safe paths through hostile terrain. But they were fighting not just enemy units, but an entire planet that had become their enemy. "Colonel," one of her sergeants reported, "we've reached the planetary core control center, but the entire structure is defended by integrated Devourer units. We can't get close without being consumed." Myung studied the tactical situation. The planetary core was powering part of the gateway's energy requirements. If they could destroy it, they might buy the fleet precious time. "All units, prepare for final assault," she ordered. "We're going to take that core even if it kills us, all." Engineer Su Young finished her modifications to the world ship weapons just as the battle reached its climax. The new dimensional collapse technology was untested, dangerous, and potentially catastrophic, but it was their only hope. "Fleet Admiral," she reported, "dimensional weapons are ready, but I need all world ships to coordinate their fire simultaneously. If even one ship fires out of sequence, the dimensional stress could cascade uncontrollably." "Understood," Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo replied. "All world ships prepare for synchronized dimensional strike. Target the gateway structure, fire on my mark." The 200 human world ships moved into perfect formation around the massive gateway. Each ship was larger than most inhabited worlds. armed with weapons that could affect the fundamental forces of reality. Together, they represented the concentrated will of an entire species that had transformed itself for this single moment. But the Devourers were not passive targets. As the world ships prepared to fire, thousands of enemy units swarmed toward them, determined to prevent the attack. The space around the gateway became a chaotic battleground where the laws of physics seemed to break down. Captain Inho led the fighter screen that protected the world ships as they prepared their devastating attack. His small craft danced between moon-sized enemies, using dimensional shifts to attack from impossible angles. But the fighters were massively outnumbered. "Admiral," he reported, "we can't hold them off much longer. Enemy units are breaking through our screen. Just give us 30 more seconds," Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo replied. Captain Dong Hyun made his decision in that moment. The Busan Eternal was the most advanced world ship in the human fleet, equipped with experimental technology that existed nowhere else. If he positioned his ship directly between the gateway and the main fleet, he could use his experimental shields to buy them the time they needed. "Busan Eternal to all ships," he announced. "I'm moving to block the enemy advance. Continue the dimensional weapon sequence." "Donghyun, don't," Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo ordered. "Your ship is too valuable to lose." "Admiral, this is what we built her for," Captain Donghyun replied calmly. "To be exactly where she's needed most." The Busan Eternal accelerated toward the gateway, placing itself between the swarming Devourer units and the charging world ships. Its experimental shields expanded to cover an area larger than most solar systems, absorbing attacks that would have destroyed entire fleets. But the strain was enormous. Captain Dong Hyun watched his ship's systems overload one by one as they absorbed energy from thousands of enemy weapons. "Sir," his engineering officer reported, "shield generators are at 200% capacity and climbing. We can't maintain this much longer." "We don't need much longer," Captain Dong Hyun replied, watching the countdown to the dimensional weapon strike. "Just hold together for 15 more seconds." On the surface of converted Andoria Prime, Colonel Mi Young's forces reached the planetary core in a final desperate assault. Half her soldiers had been lost fighting through terrain that actively tried to consume them, but the survivors pressed forward with grim determination. "Charges placed," her demolitions expert reported. "Core will be destroyed in 30 seconds. All units withdraw to minimum safe distance," Mi Young ordered. But as she looked around at her exhausted soldiers, she realized there was no safe distance. They had penetrated too deep into hostile territory. The explosion that would destroy the core would take them with it. "Colonel," one of her sergeants asked, "what are your orders?" Mi Young looked at the countdown timer on her tactical display. The world ships would fire their dimensional weapons in exactly 10 seconds. If her ground forces could destroy the planetary core at the same moment, it might disrupt the gateway's power systems long enough for the dimensional strike to succeed. "Hold position," she ordered. "We finished the mission." Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo watched the tactical displays as all the pieces of humanity's desperate plan came together. The Busan Eternal was holding off the enemy advance, but barely. Colonel Mi Young's forces were in position to destroy the planetary power source. Dr. Sora's dimensional weapons were charged and ready. Everything depended on the next 5 seconds. "All world ships," he announced. "Fire." 200 beams of pure dimensional force struck the gateway simultaneously. The weapons existed in multiple dimensions at once, attacking the structure from angles that had no name in normal physics. Space itself screamed as reality bent and twisted around the impact points. At the same moment, Colonel Mi Young's explosives destroyed the planetary core of converted Andoria Prime. The massive power surge that had been feeding the gateway cut off instantly, leaving the structure vulnerable to the dimensional attack. The gateway began to collapse in on itself, creating a wound in space-time that pulled everything nearby into non-existence. Thousands of Devourer units were caught in the dimensional implosion and simply ceased to be, but the collapsing gateway created a feedback wave that spread outward at the speed of light. Captain Dong Hyun's world ship was directly in its path. "Hands brace for impact," he ordered as the wave of twisted space-time reached his ship.